So for the last few weeks, we've been walking through the book of Acts and specifically looking at what happened after Jesus came that completely changed everything. And we looked at it at first and go, what does that mean specifically for individuals? And then what does it mean as a church to be different? And so to be different, we have to understand what it was to be the original, right? You have to understand the original to know what changed. And so before we kind of jump into the text this morning, I want you to understand that before Jesus came, God existed, right? God had given the law. God had given multiple different things that were written down so that we could understand how to live. And he had given a law that was considered a moral law. And if you were to go, well, what does that mean, the moral law? He had given the 10 Commandments, if you will. We know that there are certain things that morally they are just right or they are wrong. There's no black or there's no gray area in them. You either kill or you don't kill, right? You either lie or you don't lie. You either covet or you don't covet. You either love God or you don't. And so you look at this moral law, this moral code that was set going, God is giving them this law, and it's not as if these things were okay before he gave the law. Now he is just writing down, okay, this is stuff that you should already be aware of, but we're giving you this so that you have a complete understanding that this is right and wrong. This is how you should live. And you see that was given to Moses. And then also there were a lot of other little things that were added onto that as well, because this was given, these laws were given not just to people, but to a nation. And so that's where for us it can be a little bit difficult sometimes to understand how is God changing things now, because we live in a nation that we would go, oh yeah, maybe there's some things that Christianity influenced when it first began, or maybe there's some Bible verses written on a Supreme Court somewhere, but overall we go, well, we're not a nation that is governed by Christianity, right? All of our laws, everything that is written is not all Christianity. Might have been influenced by it. You might have pieces of it here and there that you go, oh, that clearly came from this. But for the most part, you go, we're not governed by Jesus and also following Jesus. Does that make sense? Whereas the nation of Israel, they were following God, and also their law and everything in it, their governance was all from God as well. And so the things that we read in the Old Testament, we have to understand that some of this is coming from moral law, some of it is coming from this governmental law, and then some of it you could call ceremonial or worship law, to go, what would be considered as good worship, as pure worship, as holy worship, or the way that we worship. And so there were things that, well, you would need to make sure that you washed your hands a certain way. You would need to make sure that you had to go in and pay certain penance a certain way. You would have to do certain sacrifices a certain way. You would have to worship on a certain day. You would have to pray at certain times. And so you have this moral law of right and wrong. You have the governmental law of this is how we live. This is how I have to treat the others around me and live with others around me. And then there's this, what is pleasing and acceptable worship? And you go, okay, that's a whole lot. Usually you don't start off with like a funny story. Like, we're jumping right into that. And so the reason I'm jumping right into that is because we're about to head into this narrative of what happens with Peter. And if you don't understand how everything was set up, then you're not going to understand how things are changing. And it might even be confusing to this day to go, okay, well, what did Jesus change? What did he not change? Did everything change? Did just pieces of it change? So let's jump in. If you have your Bible, you can go to Acts chapter 10. If you don't have your Bible, you got your phone, you can go to the Bible app, or you can scan the QR code in front of you, and that will take you to a spot where you can read along with us as well as add your own notes. But I'm going to start in chapter 10, verse 1. It says, at Caesarea. And so we are spending some more time along the coast of Israel right now. Okay, so last week we talked about that we were kind of in this Jaffa or Joppa area, which is pretty much now the Tel Aviv airport. And now we're going just a little bit north on the coast, about 40 miles up the coast to Caesarea. And this is not to be confused. If you've read other places, you might have heard Caesarea Philippi. Not the same place. Different place. That was a place that was kind of more up towards the mountains, and it was called Caesarea Philippi, and the reason they added Philippi there is to differentiate it. You go, why is all this Caesarea stuff? Take the IA off of it, what do you got? Caesar, right? So this is Roman times, and we are paying homage to the Roman emperor at the time. And Herod at the time is really governing all of this area, and he wants to stay in some good graces there. And so this is Caesarea. And there was a man named Cornelius. Not a Jewish name. You figure that out real quick, right? A centurion in what was known as the Italian regiment. Shout out Italians. There you go. You made it. All right. He and all his family were devout and God-fearing. And so we have this man, this Italian man, or at least he's leading the Italian regiment. He's got kind of an Italian name here. His name's Cornelius. He's leading 100 soldiers. He's in charge of 100 soldiers in this area. He's kind of an important guy, kind of an influential guy. But he's a guy that wants to follow God. He's a guy that wants to obey God. He's a guy that has faith. He's a pretty religious guy. And he gave generously to those in need and prayed to God regularly. So this is not like your typical what you would expect of a Roman centurion, a soldier. Like this is not what you would expect. This is a God-fearing man that is actually trying to help others and lead well, follow God. This is a nice guy. He's a good guy. He and all his family were devout and God-fearing. He gave generously to those in need and prayed to God regularly. One day at about 3 in the afternoon, okay, so it's 3 in the afternoon. This is the 9th hour, 3 p.m. This is the normal Jewish time to pray. So like this is a time that's set aside for them to pray. And so you've got this guy, he's praying to the God of the Jews. Well, this is kind of interesting here. And he had a vision. And he distinctly saw an angel of God who came to him and said, Cornelius. And Cornelius stared at him in fear. What is it, Lord? The angel answered, your prayers and gifts to the poor have come up as a memorial offering before God. Here's the amazing thing. I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but do people that don't know Jesus, can God hear their prayers? Does God listen to their prayers? Right here he does. See, it's kind of one of those things where you go, I don't think that's a yes or no. I'm a believer, but does God always listen to my prayers? Does God always do what I ask him to do? No. Why? Because God answers our prayers based on his will, not ours. And so you have somebody that he truly is seeking after God. He's truly wanting to follow God. And God hears him and says, all of these things that you've been doing, it seems like you're doing them. You're doing them for the right reason. You're praying and you're wanting to seek me. I'm not ignoring those things. I'm hearing those. And the reason that I'm here is because God has heard those prayers. Your prayers and gifts to the poor have come up as a memorial offering before God. Now, send men to Joppa to bring back a man named Simon who is called Peter. He is staying with Simon the tanner, whose house is by the sea. Now you go, man, Peter's got it nice. Got the house by the sea. No, Peter is at this man's house. He's staying at this man's house who is a tanner. No, he's not getting a suntan by the sea. He is a tanner, which means he has to kill the animals, skin the animals, make leather. And they would use all of this stuff. It would smell so bad that people would say, you've got to kind of live on the outskirts of town, and you need to be kind of like away to where the wind is going to blow the opposite direction. So he's by the sea, not because it's a nice place to be. He's away from people. And Peter is staying at this guy's house. It's about the only place probably he's got to stay, but he's there. He's at Simon the tanner's house. Or sorry, he's at Simon the tanner's house, whose house is by the sea. And when the angel who spoke to him had gone, Cornelius called two of his servants and a devout soldier who was one of his attendants. And he told them everything that had happened and sent them to Joppa. So part one, we have this man, this centurion, this man that is trying to seek after God. He's got all of these people that follow him, that do what he orders them to do. He clearly says, I'm going to take a couple of these guys and I'm going to send them because this is what I was ordered to do. And I'm going to send them to go get Peter. Pause. We're going to jump to a different narrative. What's going on here? Verse 9. About noon the following day, as they were on their journey and approaching the city. So there are people. They're on their way. They're walking. They don't know what they're walking into. Peter has no idea that they are coming. Peter went up on the roof to pray. And he became hungry and wanted something to eat. And while the meal was being prepared, and pretty much anywhere that I've read or studied would suggest the people that are making this food, it's just Simon's family. They're making, these are not servants. This is just Simon's family's making the food. They wanted something to eat. While the meal was being prepared, he fell into a trance. And he saw heaven opened and something like a large sheet being let down to earth by its four corners. It contained all kinds of four-footed animals as well as reptiles and birds. Then a voice told him, "Get up, Peter, kill and eat." If you grew up in the South, and when I mean the South, I mean the South as in the United States of America, the South, and somewhere maybe Georgia, South Carolina, Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, maybe some other places. If someone says, "Get up, kill, and eat," you're thinking deer stand, corn feeders, like all that stuff. Get your camo on. You might even put some doe urine on. Make sure you smell right. Not to your wife, but to somebody else. You're getting. I don't do these things. I'm a city slicker, but my family does. So you're thinking like, kill and eat. This is great. This doesn't bother me at all. What's so crazy about this? But if you grew up in this day, this is shocking. Because to the law, the ceremonial, the worship law, would be like, all of these things would make you unclean. This governmental law, all of these things would make you not look like the nation of Israel. It would make you look like every other nation on earth. No, I'm not doing any of these things. What are you talking about? Get up, Peter, kill and eat. And I lost where I'm at. Where did I go? Oh, there we go. Surely not, Lord, Peter replied. I have never eaten anything impure or unclean. I mean, kudos to him that he could actually say that. He's gone through his entire life. He's actually followed the law. If I were like Peter, I probably wouldn't even be able to say that. Be like, no, pulled pork's my jam. I like that. I can't. What are you talking about? Like, I grew up eating stuff. That's too much. Surely not, Lord, Peter replied. I have never eaten anything impure or unclean. And the voice spoke to him a second time. Do not call anything impure that God has made clean. This happened 3 times. And immediately the sheet was taken back to heaven. While Peter was wondering about the meaning of the vision, the men sent by Cornelius found out where Simon's house was and stopped at the gate. They called out asking if Simon, who was known as Peter, was staying there. And while Peter was still thinking about the vision, he shook, all right? He is like, what is going on? The Spirit said to him, Simon, 3 men are looking for you, so get up and go downstairs. Do not hesitate to go with them, for I have sent them. Peter went down and said to the men, I'm the one you're looking for. Why have you come? And the men replied, We've come from Cornelius the centurion. He's a righteous and God-fearing man who is respected by all the Jewish people. A holy angel told him to ask you to come to his house so that he could hear what you have to say. Then Peter invited the men into the house to be his guest. Here's what you have to understand. I don't know if you've heard this saying before, but this really applies here. Like, while you and me, we're playing checkers, God's playing chess. Like, Peter is in his own little world. He's having his own prayers. He's asking God for things. He's hoping to obey God for things. And he's in this city, and this is going on. He doesn't know who Cornelius is. He doesn't know anything that's going on in Caesarea. He doesn't know any of this. At the very same time, you've got men that are coming that were ordered to come. And the reason they were ordered to come is because there's a man named Cornelius who doesn't know Peter, doesn't know all of these things, and yet he's going, I'm trying to follow God. God, can you help me out in this? I don't understand what's going on. And he's seeking God, and at the same time, God is speaking to him. And so many times in life, I think this is what is happening, is we are looking in through our eyes, and we are going, how do I obey God? And I want to obey God. And how do I live for God? And I want to live God. Or how do I accomplish things for God? And how do I accomplish things for God? And what we do is we start to play checkers, because we can see 5 feet in front of us and we go, oh, this is how I can make a difference for you today, God. And we kind of tell God and go, God, this is what I'm going to do. Will you bless it? And while I go, that's great. That's better than you saying, well, I'm just going to do whatever I want. What really needs to be happening is we have to understand that while we can see one move in front of us, what is going on, we follow the author of creation. We follow the author of eternity. We follow the one that offers salvation. We follow the one whose spirit indwells believers all over the world. And we try to make sense of things. And we can only see 1, 2 moves in front of us. And God is playing checkers, and he's got pieces laid out for thousands of years in advance. And we don't have a clue what's going to happen in the next hour. And so the first thing that I think we have to understand is this idea of us being in control is, 1, you're not in control. But 2, stop fighting to be in control. Because what happens is, if you play checkers long enough, and I'll even do this with my kids, is I can play checkers and I can back myself into a corner and I can't move anymore. Because I can only see a couple moves in advance, and I'm only so smart, and that's just what happens sometimes. And in life, this is what can happen. So many times we can paint ourselves, we can live ourselves into a corner that we can't get out of, or that we shouldn't even be in. And God has laid something out very different for our lives. But we didn't seek him, we sought control. So the first thing that we've got to understand is God is in control. And God is playing checkers while we are playing chess. And if we will fall under his rule and his reign, that he can do amazing things that we didn't even know were possible, like speaking to someone to come help us that are in a completely different city that we didn't even know they existed before. And this is what happens to Cornelius. He's playing chess. We're playing checkers. And he can bring people together that are very, very different. These men are very different. One is a centurion. He's over 100 men as well as his servants. You know, he's somewhat fairly well off. He's got other people that can do what he needs him to do or needs done for them. And yet at the same time, you've got Peter over here who's bumming a spot on the couch as Simon the Tanner. And if we were to take that same outlook, we could look at it and go, well, if I'm like Peter, I don't have anything to offer that guy. That guy's got all the things that I was wishing for. He's got the servants. He's got the money. He's got all of these things. I don't have them. Yet what's interesting is Peter, this man who's pretty much bumming a ride on this couch, Simon the Tanner, he's the very one that Cornelius desperately needs to hear from. So you go, well, God is in control. God is ordering me to obey. And maybe we can realize that God is putting you into some positions where you have much more to offer than you ever realized. If only you listened and had faith to believe what was being told to you. Then Peter invited the men into the house to be his guests. And we keep reading on. And I'm going to go back here. I don't know what I did here. I feel like Thomas Jefferson with a chopped up Bible or something over here. Somebody will get that joke. Somebody won't. There we go. All right, the next day. All right. The next day, Peter started out with them, and some of the believers from Joppa went along. The following day, he arrived in Caesarea. Cornelius was expecting them and had called together his relatives and close friends. Even a man that didn't know Jesus brought a crowd together to hear about him. I'm just saying, you don't have to walk a perfect walk to bring people to Jesus. You don't have to have all of the answers to bring people to Jesus. You may not even be the one to give the message, but you can get some people around to hear the message. Little sidebar. Verse 25, as Peter entered the house, Cornelius met him and fell at his feet in reverence. But Peter made him get up. Stand up, he said. I am only a man myself. And while talking with them, Peter went inside and found a large gathering of people. And he said to them, you're well aware that it is against our law for a Jew to associate with or visit a Gentile. But God has shown me that I should not call anyone impure or unclean. So when I was sent for, I came without raising any objection. May I ask why you sent for me? And then Cornelius answered, 3 days ago I was in my house praying. And he goes on to share exactly what happened. But there's something that I want you to understand, and this is what we're going to talk about a little bit before we dismiss. And there's this kind of parallel that is happening. And so in this dream that Peter has, there are some shocking things that are being shown to him. They are shocking because everything that he had built his life around was all about rule, 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 rule. And Jesus comes and he messes that up. And then this vision comes and this vision messes that up. And the thing that it messes it up is all of these animals that were declared unclean that he shouldn't eat because they were unclean. Now he's told, oh, get up, kill, and eat. And yet at the same time, what we read is Peter understands this as meaning something way bigger than food. He's going, how dare you call anyone unclean? How dare you call anyone uncommon that I have made, that I have created, that I have declared clean? And so there's two things that we understand from this. The first one, the smallest one, is guess what? Hey, this food, I can have some pulled pork. That's great. This food, it doesn't matter necessarily how it was cooked and all of this stuff. That's great. I can eat it. Because why? Because Christ came to fulfill the law. Now, he also says, I didn't come to get rid of the law, I came to fulfill it. And you go, okay, well then, wait a minute. I've read a lot of stuff in Leviticus, and I've even seen that West Wing episode where the guy quotes some Leviticus stuff and just threw down on that guy that was trying to talk about certain sins. And, well, if you're going to say that this is no longer the law, then why isn't this the law? If you're going to say that you can eat this, well, then what about that sexual law that's in Leviticus? Why isn't that still accurate? And that's where it's very important for us to understand the differences between the law, to go, is this a moral law of right and wrong? Is this a governmental law to go, I am making you a nation that is set apart from those around you? Or is this kind of this worship ceremonial law to go, this is how you worship. This is how you come and offer yourself in worship. And so what we see here clearly is to go, well, Jesus did not come to die to make it okay for you to kill your neighbor. Like, I think most of us would go, oh, yes, okay. Well, that's a Levitical law. That's in there too. That's also in the Ten Commandments. All of those things. So, okay, all right, I get that. But what about all of the other things? I think that's where we have to go. What is it that God has done as far as creation and then called us to and told us to, not just in one book, but in many, many books? And we go, okay, well, about these sexual things specifically. We go, are we looking at the book of Leviticus and going, okay, well, that's just there? Are we going, no, this is also in the New Testament. This is how to live your life. And this also follows in line with how God created people and how they should live together. Okay, that's also in line. And so that's where we go, all right, we've got to start being a little bit more nuanced about what does this mean for something to be fulfilled in the law or not. To give you a clear picture of what this was about, I'm going to show you my new tattoo. Well, I was going to show you my new tattoo, but it's gone. My new tattoo is gone. Friday I got a tattoo, or Saturday I got a tattoo. You know that? A temporary tattoo. But I got a tattoo, and the reason I got a tattoo, temporary tattoo, was pretty awesome. It said Dad on it, and it had Bluey, the character, the dog on there, Bluey on there. My youngest son loves tattoos. If we make it to the age of like when he's 15 without him having tattoos, it's a success. So he's got a couple by 18. I just hope they look good. And so he was like, he wanted tattoos, and then he wanted everybody else to get a tattoo. And so we got our Bluey tattoos and put them on. We kind of marked them, and you could tell, like, I belong to my son. Like, you could tell. He's got like 10 tattoos all over him, and I'm just kind of his little follower with one tattoo. But it would set me apart. This little mark would set me apart, and I would put that on me. But the problem is it's a temporary tattoo. It's a mark on the outside of my body, and it washed off. It's gone. The outside is gone. But at one point, it was a way for you to very easily identify that, oh, I must be so-and-so's dad. And now, that tattoo is gone. Does that mean that I'm no longer his? No. It just means that the sign must be different. And so for years and years and years, the nation of Israel was marked by God as his by all of these outward things that would distinguish them from everyone else. They ate differently. They worshiped differently. They acted differently. They did all of these things that were different than everyone around them. And now Jesus comes and Jesus goes, you will no longer be marked by some temporary thing that you do externally to show that you belong to me. I am now marking you by my death, resurrection, and placing my Spirit upon you and within you. You have been marked by me. And so I'm fulfilling what this law was trying to accomplish initially, now once and for all. And so you go, that doesn't get rid of all of the moral, this is wrong or this is right. But what it does is you no longer have to do these external things for this worship to be pleasing. You no longer have to do these governmental things to set yourself apart from the other nations, because what sets you apart is my Spirit living within you and through you. And now you live very differently because of it. See, Jesus didn't come just so I could have pulled pork, because now food that was inherently bad is now pure, right? He came to fulfill the purpose of that law. That it wouldn't be that you were circumcised, it wouldn't be the clothes you wore, it wouldn't be the food you ate that set you apart from the rest of the world. It would be him living in you and through you that would set you apart, that would mark you. And because of that, all of those people, this is kind of what Peter is getting, all of those people that used to eat that way, all of those other nations that used to dress that way or eat that way or worship on a certain day, all of those things, don't call them common or unclean. All of the racial things, all of the cultural things, those divisions are done. My people aren't a race. My people are this holy communion, this holy family that I have declared righteous by my Son, Jesus Christ. And so we go, yes, there is this fulfillment of the law, and now I can eat freely. That's great. That's cool. That's awesome. That's great. But the big shift that happens here is God is going, I am no longer marking my people by the outward things, and all of these people having to live like this to say that they're marked by me. No, I am marking people in a very different way. And so now as you go, Peter, you're not just going to the Jews, because the gospel is for everyone. The gospel is available to everyone. And the gospel is to be preached to everyone. I just say something, especially in these times. I've heard things from my neighbors or on Nextdoor or from other people as you're kind of checking out the realty in the area you're looking to move in, and people say things. And they say some things about, the people that are moving here, the people that are coming here. They say things. I hear things. Then I tell them a pastor, and then they don't say things anymore. But people say things about certain groups that are now living in this area. People say things about the people that are coming from different countries that live in this area. And usually they're not nice. You know, I thought this happened in Arkansas in 1975. Apparently it happens in Orlando in 2023. There's some racism around. There's also some kind of like cultural issues of going, well, it's not necessarily just race, but it's also cultural. And there's some things that people say, but can I just tell you, and I'm going to say this to you because I think you'll understand it. I think you will get it, and I think you will go, yeah, that's what we should be about. But there should not be any greater friend to those attending the mosque down the road. There should not be any greater friend to those attending the synagogue down the road, and there should not be any greater friend to any of them than us. That we should be compassionate, that we should be caring friends, that we shouldn't look in fear and go, they are different, they worship different, so I'm going to treat them different. They worship different. Those people are from the same culture that did this. Remember back in 2001? They did this. Have you heard people say stuff like that? I have. Yeah, God's going, you're looking at all these external things, and you're looking at maybe the way that people live right now, and they don't know me. But what sets them apart is not the country they're from. What sets you apart is not the color of your skin. What sets you apart is that I live within you. And if I live within you, then you should be treating these people much differently. That's not always easy because they're human too. They may not treat you back the same way, and that's okay. But they might. And the other part of that, he goes, here's Cornelius, a man that is seeking after God, that wants to follow God. He's a good man. He's a righteous, religious man. And yet, what did he lack? What did he need? He still needed Peter to come and share the name of Jesus with him. Our community, whether they're worshiping somebody somewhere today, or they did yesterday, or they didn't worship anywhere, our community is full of spiritually hungry people, religious, good, nice people. But they still need to hear the name of Jesus preached. And that's where we have to be a people that goes, no matter who it is, no matter what they think of me, I'm going to be the one that compassionately shares the name of Jesus everywhere I go, with anyone that I encounter. But I'm also going to serve them. I'm also going to treat them as if God died for them just as much as he died for me. Because Jesus did. For everyone. Anyone that would call upon the name of the Lord would be saved. Anyone. We're set apart. We're marked by him. Not any of the external stuff anymore. The great thing is, when we know that, we also know that when we stumble, when we fall, when we mess up, when we're not perfect, I'm not marked by what I just did 10 minutes ago. I'm marked by the Holy Spirit that lives within me, that forgives me, and that declares me righteous, even when I don't deserve